There is a weapon flying over the Middle East right now that the Pentagon has no reliable answer for, not because the engineers at Lockheed, Raytheon and Northrop Grumman haven't been working on the problem. They have. Not because America lacks the resources to try to solve it. It doesn't. But because the solution to this specific problem does not yet exist in a deployable form, and while that solution is still being built in classified research facilities, Iran is using the weapon in real combat against American allies and American military interests. Right now, the weapon is not a new missile design, it is not a new explosive, it is something far more sophisticated and far more difficult to defeat. It is a brain, a navigation system built into Iran's most advanced ballistic and cruise missiles that uses China's BeiDou satellite network to guide those weapons with precision that cannot be jammed by any system currently deployed in the Middle East theater. By the time you finish watching this, you are going to understand why Iran's missiles have been hitting things in this conflict that Iran's missiles were never supposed to be able to hit, why the electronic warfare systems America deployed specifically to protect its allies keep coming up short, why the Pentagon is genuinely alarmed, and why the most important audience watching every Iranian missile launch right now is not in Tel Aviv or Washington, it is in Beijing. The problem with GPS. Start with what everyone knows. GPS, the American Global Positioning System, the satellite network that tells your phone where it is, guides delivery drones, directs precision weapons, and underlies an enormous proportion of the modern world's navigation infrastructure. GPS works because your device receives signals from multiple satellites simultaneously and calculates its exact position from the timing differences between those signals. For military applications, encrypted signals provide accuracy measured in centimeters. For practical purposes, you can guide a missile to a specific window of a specific building on a specific floor, but GPS is an American military asset. The United States controls it. In wartime, American forces can theoretically degrade or deny GPS signals over specific geographic areas, and American electronic warfare systems have been specifically designed to jam or spoof GPS signals, flood a target area with false signals, feed incorrect position data to an enemy missile, and watch it go off course. This is one of the foundational principles of modern electronic warfare. America has invested billions developing it over decades. It works. Here is the problem. China built its own satellite navigation system. They named it BeiDou. What BeiDou actually is BeiDou is fully operational. Global satellite constellation, covers every inch of Earth's surface, provides navigation data to any device equipped to receive it, and it uses different frequencies from GPS, different signal structures, different encryption and authentication systems. The jamming techniques that work against GPS do not automatically work against BeiDou. The spoofing methods that can feed false position data to a GPS receiver do not translate directly to defeating BeiDou navigation. This is not a minor technical inconvenience. This is a fundamental problem for the electronic warfare systems American forces deployed to the Middle East specifically to protect American allies from Iranian missile attacks. Those systems were designed and built primarily to counter GPS-guided weapons. They were built to complement interception systems against ballistic missiles with known trajectories. They were not designed from the ground up to defeat a Chinese satellite navigation system that operates on different principles and different frequencies. And Iran's most advanced missiles are using BeiDou right now. Let that sit for a second. America spent decades and billions building systems to defeat GPS-guided threats. China built a different GPS. Iran put China's GPS inside its missiles. And America is now fighting those missiles with jamming equipment that was calibrated for the wrong problem. How Iran got here. This did not happen overnight. It is the product of years of deepening military and technological cooperation between Iran and China that has accelerated dramatically since Western sanctions cut Tehran off from most global technology markets. China has been Iran's most important technology partner in the post-sanctions era. Chinese components appear in Iranian drones. Chinese manufacturing technology is incorporated into Iranian defense production, and Chinese satellite navigation technology has been integrated into Iran's most advanced missile guidance systems. The integration was deliberate. Iran's missile program had a persistent limitation for most of its history: accuracy. Ballistic missiles are only useful as weapons if they can reliably hit what you aim at. For decades, Iran's systems measured accuracy in hundreds of meters. Against a large target, a city, a military base, that was sufficient. Against a specific structure within a complex, it was not. If you want to hit the command center inside an airbase, rather than just the general area of the airbase, you need guidance precision that Iran's older inertial navigation systems could not achieve. Inertial navigation accumulates positioning errors over the course of a long flight. The missile starts on course and drifts. By the time it arrives, it might be anywhere within a significant radius of where it was aimed. BeiDou solves this by allowing continuous course correction throughout the flight. The missile is constantly checking its position against satellite signals and correcting its trajectory in real time. It arrives at its target with accuracy measured in meters, not hundreds of meters. For Iran's military planners, BeiDou integration was not a nice upgrade. It was the answer to the most persistent weakness in their entire arsenal. China presents BeiDou as a civilian navigation system, a peaceful commercial application available globally. Iran's integration of it into ballistic missiles that are currently killing people across the Middle East makes that framing extremely difficult to sustain. Beijing knows this. Beijing accepted this. The civilian framing provides diplomatic cover that China finds useful, while the military application was understood by everyone in the room. What the difference actually looks like in combat. The impact of BeiDou-guided Iranian missiles has been visible in this conflict in ways that military analysts have been noting for weeks. The strikes on Israeli military infrastructure showed a level of targeting precision more consistent with GPS quality guidance than with older Iranian inertial systems. Attacks on specific American military base components in the Gulf, targeting particular facilities rather than just general area bombardment, reflected a guidance capability that was not evident in Iran's earlier missile campaigns. And most alarmingly for American military planners, the electronic warfare systems deployed specifically to degrade Iranian missile accuracy have been less effective than expected against the most recent generation of Iranian launches. That pattern, jamming working against older systems, failing against newer ones, is exactly what you would expect if the newer missiles are using a navigation system the jamming equipment was not specifically designed to counter. The Pentagon cannot simply deploy the jamming systems it would use against GPS-guided threats and expect them to work against BeiDou. The frequencies are different, the signal structures are different, the authentication and encryption protocols are different. Developing effective countermeasures requires dedicated technical work that takes time. That work is certainly underway somewhere in the American defense research apparatus. But the systems deployed in the Middle East today were not built to defeat BeiDou. And Iran's weapons are using BeiDou today. That gap, between when Iran's BeiDou-guided missiles became operational and when effective countermeasures are deployed and proven in the field, is open right now, and Iran is flying missiles through it. What this does to THAAD. Now let's talk about the THAAD batteries America has been deploying across the Gulf. Because the BeiDou problem is not just about electronic warfare, it also changes the physics of interception. The IAD works by tracking an incoming missile with its powerful radar, calculating the interception point and launching an interceptor that destroys the incoming weapon by colliding with it at hypersonic speed. The core requirement: the radar track must be accurate and the incoming missile must follow a predictable enough trajectory that the interception point calculation is reliable. BeiDou guidance creates two complications that didn't exist at the same level with older Iranian systems. First, a more precisely guided missile can be directed onto a more complex flight path that makes the interception calculation harder. If the missile is actively correcting its course throughout its flight rather than following a purely ballistic arc, the interception point calculation has more variables. Second, if Iran is using BeiDou to enable terminal guidance corrections in the final seconds before impact, the missile's last approach trajectory becomes less predictable than a missile that simply follows physics. Intercepting a missile that is actively adjusting course in its final moments is harder than intercepting one that is locked on a fixed arc. None of this means THAAD cannot intercept BeiDou-guided Iranian missiles. THAAD is an extraordinarily capable system, but it does mean intercept probability against the most advanced Iranian missiles may be lower than against older systems. And in a conflict where Iran has fired hundreds of missiles, even a modest reduction in intercept probability translates into more successful strikes on intended targets. Here is the number that makes this operationally significant. By day 10 of the conflict, Iran had fired approximately 300 ballistic missiles at Israel alone, half of them equipped with cluster warheads. Even if THAAD's intercept rate drops by 5 percentage points against BeiDou-guided systems versus older ones, that's 15 additional missiles reaching their targets across the opening phase of the conflict. Each one carrying 1,500 kilograms of explosive or cluster submunitions across a 5-kilometer dispersal radius. Modest probability reduction. Massive real-world consequence. The financial trail runs through your gas pump. Now follow the chain to where this becomes personal. The BeiDou capability changes the negotiation calculus for ending this conflict in a specific way. Here's why. Iran's missile arsenal has been significantly depleted over 28 days of Operation Epic Fury. US and Israeli operations destroyed an estimated 3/4 of Iran's operational launch infrastructure. Hundreds of older missiles have been fired or their launchers eliminated. The IRGC began this conflict with the massive, volume-intensive opening salvo, 600 to 700 missiles in the first 6 days, designed to saturate defenses and expose seams. Those were disproportionately the older, less accurate systems. What Iran is firing now is a smaller volume of its most capable weapons, the BeiDou guided missiles, the ones with cluster warheads, the ones specifically engineered to hit what they are aimed at. Iran's missile threat in Week 4 is not weaker than Week 1 in every dimension. It is smaller in volume and more precise in capability, fewer missiles that are harder to stop and more likely to hit exactly what Iran intends them to hit. That asymmetry matters enormously for the ceasefire negotiations running through Pakistan and Turkey and Egypt right now. Both sides know what Iran's remaining inventory can do. Both sides know the American jamming systems aren't fully calibrated for BeiDou. Both sides know that the Gulf state infrastructure, desalination plants, LNG terminals, oil refinery complexes, is sitting inside the accuracy envelope of whatever Iran has left. The UAE has intercepted over 1,300 Iranian drones and missiles. That number is impressive. A more accurate incoming weapon is a harder interception problem than a less accurate one. The Gulf states' urgency about ending this conflict is directly connected to their understanding of what's still in Iran's arsenal and what it can now hit with precision. Brent crude is at $106. Goldman Sachs projects elevated prices through 2027. The Strait of Hormuz is moving 5 ships per day instead of 138. Your gas is approaching $4 nationally, above $5 in California. That price is partly a BeiDou story. A more capable Iranian missile force means a longer conflict calculus. A longer conflict means a longer strait closure. A longer strait closure means the supply disruption compounds every week. The satellite orbiting in space is connected through a chain of physical and economic consequence to the number on the gas station sign you drove past this morning. What China is watching for China, Iran's use of BeiDou in this conflict creates a visibility problem that Beijing would strongly prefer to avoid. China's official position is that BeiDou is a civilian navigation system. That framing is now being stress-tested in real time by footage of BeiDou-guided Iranian ballistic missiles landing in Israeli cities, on American military bases, and near Gulf state oil infrastructure. Western governments are documenting it. Intelligence services are tracking it. The diplomatic pressure on Beijing to limit the military application of BeiDou technology will intensify as the evidence becomes more widely understood. China has already communicated to Iranian leadership that it wants this conflict to end. The economic pressure is obvious. China depends heavily on Gulf energy flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. The BeiDou story adds another layer of international scrutiny that Beijing finds costly. China is not a passive observer of this conflict. It is a participant whose technology is killing people and whose satellite network is guiding the weapons doing the killing. The international community is watching that and calculating what it means. This is part of why China's pressure on Iran to negotiate is real rather than performative. Every additional week of conflict is another week of BeiDou combat performance data being gathered by American intelligence services and shared with every US ally facing Chinese-equipped adversaries. China is effectively running a real-world demonstration of the military applications of its satellite network against American electronic warfare systems, whether it wants to or not. Beijing wants that demonstration to end. The longer shadow this casts. Here is what makes this story bigger than the current conflict. North Korea has been watching Iran's BeiDou integration with intense interest. Pyongyang has its own missile guidance challenges and its own Chinese technology relationships. If BeiDou-guided Iranian missiles prove effective against American electronic warfare systems in this conflict, the case for BeiDou integration in North Korean missiles becomes compelling. Japan, South Korea, Australia, Taiwan, all of them are currently reading the intelligence assessments about BeiDou's combat performance in the Middle East. All of them sit within range of Chinese missiles. Many of those Chinese missiles already use BeiDou guidance. The question those governments are asking is not abstract. If Iran's BeiDou-guided missiles are partially defeating American jamming assets in the Middle East, what does that mean for the missiles pointed at us? That question is being asked in Tokyo and Seoul and Canberra and Taipei right now. The answers being developed in those capitals will shape alliance defense investments, force posture decisions, and weapons procurement for the next decade. Russia is part of this picture too. Russian missiles have been studied extensively by Western intelligence in Ukraine. Russian cooperation with China on navigation technology has deepened since 2022. The cross-pollination of guidance technology concepts between Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran is creating a technology ecosystem that develops faster than Western countermeasures can track. American military dominance in the post-Cold War era was built significantly on information and navigation advantages, GPS-guided precision, electronic warfare that could defeat adversary navigation, command and control that operated in the electromagnetic spectrum in ways adversaries couldn't match. That advantage is being systematically eroded by patient Chinese investment in alternative systems. Iran is the test case. The Middle East is the laboratory. And the results of that laboratory test are going to shape military planning and alliance relationships long after whatever ceasefire eventually ends this war. What America can and cannot do. The Pentagon cannot destroy the BeiDou network. The satellites are in orbit. You cannot bomb them without triggering a space warfare escalation that would be categorically more destabilizing than anything happening on the ground in Iran. The network stays up regardless of what happens in the Middle East. The Pentagon cannot jam BeiDou with the systems currently deployed in theater. Those systems were built for a different problem. A GPS-defeating jammer does not translate to a BeiDou-defeating jammer without significant technical re-engineering. That re-engineering is happening somewhere in the classified defense research apparatus. It is not deployed. What America can do in the near term is more limited. Improving interception capabilities of existing THAAD and Patriot batteries through software updates is possible on a shorter timeline than building entirely new jamming systems. Operational adaptations, changes in how the batteries sequence their engagements, how they handle maneuvering targets, can improve performance without new hardware. And the kinetic approach that has been running for 28 days, destroying Iranian missile launchers and storage facilities, reduces the threat regardless of guidance system quality. Fewer missiles in Iran's arsenal, no matter how accurate each one is. But the fundamental reality of this conflict today is this: Iran has weapons using Chinese satellite navigation technology to achieve accuracy levels that American electronic warfare systems were not specifically designed to defeat. That capability gap is open. Iran is flying missiles through it. And the only way to stop it permanently is not to jam it. It is to end the conflict that is deploying it. 3 things to watch: the BeiDou diplomatic pressure on China. Every week this conflict continues is another week of combat-validated BeiDou performance data being gathered by Western intelligence services and shared with US allies facing Chinese-equipped adversaries. Watch for any statement from Beijing that references responsible use of BeiDou technology or any Chinese diplomatic communication that conditions its mediation support on Iran, limiting which weapon systems it deploys. That language, if it comes, signals that Beijing is feeling the BeiDou visibility problem acutely enough to start managing it publicly. The THAAD software updates. The Pentagon has been accelerating operational adaptations to improve intercept probability against more accurate incoming missiles. Watch for any CENTCOM announcement referencing enhanced missile defense protocols or updated engagement parameters. That language, in an operational briefing, means the software updates addressing the BeiDou interception problem are being rolled out to deployed batteries. It won't say BeiDou, but that is what it means. Iran's targeting patterns in remaining waves. If the late conflict Iranian strikes continue to show the same targeting precision against high-value specific components, radar systems within air bases, specific facility structures within naval installations, defined infrastructure within industrial complexes, rather than general area bombardment, BeiDou guidance is actively operational in Iran's remaining inventory. The pattern of what gets hit and how precisely it gets hit is the real-time indicator of BeiDou's battlefield role, regardless of what either government says publicly. Here is where this leaves us. China built a satellite network. It called it civilian. Iran put it inside its ballistic missiles. Those missiles are in the air over the Middle East right now, and the jamming systems America deployed to stop them were built for a different navigation technology. The precision hits that surprised analysts in weeks 1 and 2 of this conflict are not accidents. They are BeiDou. The electronic warfare systems that came up short are not malfunctioning. They were built for the wrong threat. America is aware of this. The countermeasures are in development. They are not deployed. And in the gap between in development and deployed, The gap that is open right now, today, Iran is validating Chinese military satellite technology in real combat conditions against real American systems in ways that every adversary the United States will ever face is watching and learning from. The ceasefire being relayed through Islamabad would stop the immediate damage. It would not undo the demonstration. Every missile that has already flown using BeiDou has already taught its lesson. The intelligence assessments are already written. The lessons are already being studied in Beijing and Pyongyang and in the defense ministries of every country that sits within range of Chinese-equipped forces. You cannot unring this bell. The only question now is how many more times Iran fires before someone finds a way to stop the conflict that is ringing it. That is the story the morning briefings are not fully telling you, and it starts with a satellite you've probably never heard of, orbiting silently overhead, guiding weapons toward targets across the Middle East, while America's jamming systems point at the wrong frequency.